like, that's it.
We pulled this off, I couldn't believe it. Clean.
And then you come back in. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I like Foxfire, the internet browser, because it'll tell you, hey, you can have this for like a couple hours. You can have it in the move and tell you stuff. That's my little class.
I gotta say, even if it's only you.
Watch my walking trying to do
United Way may already be applying for that one for the splash pad, that may be part of the. United Way was originally part of the splash pad group that everybody's always told me to run it. Yeah, we can look in and see if they've already applied for it, if not, whether or not it's something.
Oh, yeah?
Good to see you, buddy.
How we doing?
I mean, you're seeing.
It doesn't matter. Tell me where you want. I'd rather sit back and hide in the back.
Hey, Claire, thanks for your help the other day. I haven't heard anything back.
I don't know that, I don't know I provided any help.
And move, we just, the sound service, they still have to respond.
That sounds about right.
Do you need your laptop?
No, I mean, they don't like the link, they just tweak it so it'll be like. Have you seen what we're talking about? Have you seen what we're talking about?
You haven't heard anything from Al, have you?
I think you'll like
You
it.
haven't heard anything from Al since he was here, right?
Do I have a stack of stuff?
Get your packet, sir. Safety first,
Hey, Rick Statzer, you need to hear everything. Assistance needed, air conditioning station.
Aisle A and C. Clean up on aisle one.
you don't wanna.
Not 59.
I didn't bring my cell phone, I can't call you.
I didn't see it,
I think there's related tables.
Yeah, I like them around.
Okay.
We're gonna wait a few minutes for Mr. Bradley.
I had to park way.
I feel cool already.
I went on this one, I went.
Problem is,
They'll be here in a minute.
It's.
opposite.
See,
Yeah.
Now, what did you make this to get the separate?
parking in the last, in the basket.
On this one, I just went and put some of the current.
Thanks, Rick.
conditions underneath this.
I can remember I called today. They just seemed like a thousand buildings, so they popped east for spaces. So they switched the heat. It'd be hot in the room. So it didn't even.
I think we could probably combine these. I ain't gonna
Well, heat. We'd have to, the room is hot. But it will run. And it might. So we can do one time.
Turn off. See, Stacy.
How are you all doing? We're doing well, how are you? Good? Take it easy.
Oh, yeah. Remember this, doing the art page.
Good?
We were losing at halftime, and it started coming back.
Been up to Radford?
I set up my books at the Highland. I'm really excited they're gonna have it back on the campus. Yeah. They moved it down to this part.
I got some ballers in there.
Just pull it all together.
Carol, that's what this is. My secretary walked in.
So I was sitting over there.
Came to the door and it was.
Yeah.
Just hand it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Closed session, please.
Because we're just gonna stop that.
Send it out after.
Yes.
I'll hand it out after.
Okay, whatever.
I bet he thinks it's at 2:30. I had stuff to pass out at the dance today.
I can't.
What's up? Yeah, it was on the front page. They ran the Herald Courier. Great story.
Okay, good.
Yeah, she just did that.
Good.
14th work session of the Abingdon Town Council. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Ms. Wedge?
Here.
Mr. Webb?
Here.
Ms. Patterson? Here. And Mayor Craig?
Here. First item on the agenda is public comments, and we have none. With the council's permission, we have Mike here, if he wants to speak on the noise ordinance. That's item number 12, I believe. Yeah, item number 12. If we could move that to item, under reports of the town manager, the first item back. The next item on our agenda, if that's okay.
It's fine.
The next item on the agenda is, or the first item on the agenda is resolutions. Ken, do you have a resolution to read?
Yes. We have a resolution honoring and recognizing Marion Watts upon his retirement as a town of Abingdon employee. Whereas Marion Watts served as assistant building official from February 16, 1989 to December 15, 1995, when he was promoted to building official for the town of Abingdon, holding the position until his retirement on April 1, 2019. And whereas Marion will retire from the town of Abingdon with over 30 years of dedicated service to the town. And whereas Marion served the town during a period of growth and development while handling his duties ably and serving his community well. And whereas Marion's friendly manner and quiet personality will be missed by all who worked with him. And whereas Marion's hard work, dedication, and institutional knowledge will be missed by the town of Abingdon as he begins his well-deserved retirement. And whereas the town council recognizes his contributions and acknowledges his value as an employee of the town of Abingdon, now therefore be it resolved by the council of the town of Abingdon, Virginia, that the town council recognizes Marion Watts for his dedicated service to the town of Abingdon during his 30 years with the building department for the town of Abingdon, and that the town council officially thanks Marion Watts for all that he has done for the town of Abingdon and its citizens, and that the town wishes Marion Watts well in all that he may choose to do in his retirement, and that the town council orders this resolution to recognize Marion Watts read into the minutes of the council, and a copy be presented to Marion Watts in gratitude for a job well done. This 14th day of March 2019 by Wayne Craig, Mayor. So
Motion by Mr. Motion by Mr. Bradley to adopt the resolution. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Vice Mayor Patterson. Any discussion? Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Wedge?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye. Marion. We all think you're sitting there to yourself. Yes, sir.
Mayor, can I get a picture? Can I get a picture?
You wanna have a picture?
Yes, sir.
I'll take it, you get
Where would
it.
you like us back here?
Wherever.
Kim. Kim.
She didn't want to be in the picture. Mary wants that. Here. She heard you. Tanya wants you to
You
get
need,
the picture.
you get over there, I'll take it.
No.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you. You should.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the noise ordinance. Cam Bell.
Mr. Boswell, I think, can address it first, and then we'll go from there.
Directed by Mr. Vidham to take a look at the noise ordinance. We've had some issues in our mixed-use districts. So added some verbiage, some definitions that I think would help enforce the noise ordinance a little bit better, and especially in the mixed-use districts. For one, noise was added to the noise ordinance. We didn't really have a definition for what noise was, so we added that. Discernible, we also added, that will help with the enforcement process as well. You'll see the biggest change that we've made, is in the exemptions. Under 9, commercial establishments located in areas zoned for mixed use is defined herein between the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 a.m.
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Commercial establishments located in areas zoned for mixed use as defined herein between the hours of 7 a.m. and 12 a.m. And I'll explain why we chose those hours. We have a lot of commercial establishments in our mixed use areas that are closing at 11. Just because an establishment closes doesn't mean that the employees are gone by 11. I think we need to use a common sense approach to them being able to clean up, and there's gonna be a little bit of noise after closing. So I want to give you all an opportunity to take a look at it, make any comments, questions, concerns.
And so we, we had this issue come up, and of course, the council and the tourism department and several different departments of the town have been trying to coordinate and foment the mixed-use areas of having restaurants combined with residential living and other businesses in that area. And so I looked around the Commonwealth to see some examples of how other localities have been handling this issue. And this, in particular, the mixed-use area is an exemption in something similar to what that we have drafted here. And making a little bit more clear, although giving some subjectiveness to what plainly audible and discernible are. The balance, and we've talked about this before, is in some localities they have a device that actually measures the decibels, and the police department would rather not do that because that's another piece of equipment that we have to buy and we have to calibrate and we have to prove and those sorts of things. And then we'd have to come up with what those decibel levels are, and I'm not sure there's any, depending on where you are and how far away it is, and all that adds a lot of variables to the process. So rather than just keeping plainly audible, we've added this definition of discernible, that you have to be able to tell where it's coming from and exactly what the noise is. It can't just be some vague thumping that you hear in your location. So we thought this was consistent with what other places have done and a fair way to accommodate the issue and try to balance, of course, people's quiet enjoyment of their own property with establishing businesses and growing that area of town.
Mike, I'll recognize you before the council deliberates. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I actually, he just showed me that, and I read that, and I know that I've talked to Cam quite a bit, and I've talked to you guys a couple of times, and just to let you, actually, that's not bad, that's followable.
Why don't you tell them who you are and where you are?
Michael Faraci, I own Appalachian Cast Products. I'm also a part owner with this lady here, White Birch. And my concern has been White Birch. And we've had some very difficult times since February of last year. And it's really affected us a lot. And we're talking about real dollar sales, not counting tax revenue. And we didn't have anything to go by. And I don't even know if anybody can tell me this. I heard today, we got 2 citations on a noise level. In the last one, it was nothing there. They come in, call 911, that's an emergency call, by the way, for noise ordinance. They came up there, take our place, walked in, she just left. Band shuts down at 10. We're cleaning up, one guy's sitting there, and this guy comes in, goes upstairs, I hear something, I don't know what I really hear, but I hear something. And comes down, writes another citation, and all this had to do with, she had to leave on Wednesday, and she did it on Saturday. She had got her last dig in, and she was taken out of that apartment. She was forced to leave. A lot of problems there, because we're doing what we need to do to grow the community. We're doing what we gotta do with everyone. We've really got a very nice place there. A A lot of people in here has been there. But, if someone's gonna back it and pay for it, you gotta have some revenue coming in. And this is hurts. We had to shut down at 10:30, then shut down then they come in here 2 minutes after. This has gone on 8 times since February. We have had our people that have come in, don't wanna come there at nights, and you gotta say this as well. They don't wanna see a police officer around your building and they're drinking, okay? Even though Tony says, well, we're not there to mess with them. What, it doesn't matter about that. It matters what the people say. So I think what you're doing, what you presented, is definitely gonna help us. It gives a little bit more time, you know, and when we do clean up, it's noisy. I went up there today and had several people there to address the noise level. I have one of them, and it is checked and ready to go, and it's nothing. I went upstairs and we're talking about levels that are like 46, which is like maybe me talking right now, in front of you right now, just me. Nothing high, nothing. I go to the window, a car goes by, it jumps to 60. A truck goes by, it jumps to 68. So we're lower than all that, but we still being messed with. So if y'all gonna do that, I think we're fine right now. If y'all gonna do something, and I think Bristol's close to that, because I did talk to a couple of people down there, because it doesn't identify a decimal reader, because you can't judge that either. You got 80 people inside of a restaurant, and you walk in there, it's gonna be about 140, 150 on a decimal reader. So I just wanna make it fair, and we need help. That's giving us help. 7 a.m. to 12 gives us time to clean up, shut her down, get everybody out of there. I'm fine with that.
I do have a question for you. Could you just explain to the public, since nobody knows about this but you and the police and a few other people, I guess, what type of noise are they complaining about? And, you know, when you clean up, what would be the?
It's not anything. It's anything. This has really got to be more than anyone. It's someone that moved upstairs, very difficult individual. And she didn't like her. She didn't like Kyle. She told Jill, you need to get rid of these people. This is not the people you want here. This is all true. It's no noise. They came in the last time, no noise. 26 on a little, I mean, it's nothing. She just did it on purpose.
Okay,
That's
thanks
it.
for that explanation.
This is someone that lives in your own building?
She was living there, and she was forced out of the building, I think, Wednesday of 2 weeks. Right before this went down on my last ordinance, she had to leave on Wednesday, get out of that building. And it's all changed because Jill is changing everything. She's putting down 12 o'clock. She's putting down a certain time. She needs to let her people know what they're moving above, because we're a business. And she did not do this with Mary, but Mary didn't back off.
And the sort of overarching idea and issue that I see, particularly in this area, is so there's a business on the first floor, the residential areas upstairs, it's all the same building. So there's noise coming from the operation of the business, and then people trying to sleep and that sort of thing too, so there's gotta be a balance there. But like you said, there are periods of time where they have music, or they just have people eating, and then even after they close, as Jason said, there's still pots and pans and dishes and that sort of thing that go on, that if you live right above it might be louder. But from the police's perspective, the way the ordinance was written, if they're called and they come out during that period of time and they hear something that's plainly audible, then their position is they have no choice. They have to write a ticket. And so I think the generalized idea of what your approach would be is that it's just a civil dispute between neighbors, and why is the noise ordinance involved at all? And I think that's sort of what this is addressing here.
Jane, did you want to say something?
Yes, sir, if I may, Mr. Mayor. I just want to applaud the planning of having mixed use in our downtown. It adds a lot of vitality. Until we have a lot of people living downtown, our stores are gonna keep the same hours. If you have demand for somebody to come down and buy something, then you will stay. It's a way, it's a natural way, organic way to get those stores to stay longer so that we have foot traffic and we look vital when people get out of Barter Theater. So I want to applaud the council for supporting mixed use, and it does add to the atmosphere, the hospitality, and the economic vitality of the town. Thank you.
Explain to me, if you would, why we don't use a standard decibel measurement. Does it not apply in all circumstances, like for a truck?
I think you'd have to ask the chief of police that question. He has concerns about it, and I'm not sure I understand them completely. I think in part, it is similar to radaring for speeding. If somebody gets a violation, number one, what level do we pick? Like Mr. Faraci said, is it 60 decibels, is it 100 decibels, what does that mean? From a enforcement side, if somebody fights it and they go to court, you're gonna have to get those machines. First of all, we have to own the machines, we have to pay the money for that. You gotta bring them out there, you have to use them correctly at the right distances, and then you're gonna have to prove that they're calibrated and all that sort of thing. So it makes it a lot more complicated and expensive. And adding this extra, and like I said, there's still some subjectiveness to how this is written now, but it gives a little bit more criteria than before of just you can hear something, basically. So that's the difference as I understand it, but there may be some other concerns as to why to not do it with a machine.
I think this, what we're doing now is to correct a specific problem with mixed use. I believe that over a period of time, we're gonna review all of our ordinances, and I believe that we have a committee, and I believe they'll discuss decibels and all that at a later time.
And we had talked about, for that reason, just waiting and seeing if we just incorporate this type of change when we do the whole thing. And I think it's an immediate issue that the council needed to address, and so that's why it's coming up now.
I hear a lot of complaints about loud mufflers in town. That's one of the reasons why I'm asking.
That's, as you know, would be very difficult to enforce too. If somebody calls and that car is 5 miles away,
Most cars are all from Tennessee.
I do have something else when you're ready, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and thank you for bringing all this up to us, and I'm sorry for both parties that are involved in this. I'm gonna take a different turn and a different spin on the noise. It's gonna focus on something else in Abingdon. Abingdon is growing by leaps and bounds, no doubt, which is good. It can be cumbersome though for some people in different neighborhoods, as I've experienced, and as well as my neighbors in my neighborhood. I do want to point out to you, while you're working on the zoning ordinances, Mr. Boswell and the committee, that we need to revisit any type of construction near any type of residential area, because I've been talking about this for a long time, about how it was gonna affect the neighborhood and how it affects people. But I did find something that Albemarle County, Charlottesville area had put online for their noise ordinance. And as Mr. Bell, you were talking about the decibels and all that, the ambient sound measurements are on this page as well. And I guess, is it okay if we put this in the record? I think it is, Mr. Craig, since it's not on the, just give it to them so they can have it.
That's what I think.
Okay. And so we'll put this in the record so that you all can have a copy of this, and I'm sure Ms. Kingsley would like to make you all copies. But I will read this little bit of information so that you can really get a scope about decibels. I can only imagine what dynamite and backing of trucks and trailers and all this is on the decibel point. But it says here, Article 1, noise. Purpose and intent. The purpose and intent of this article is to establish reasonable time, place, and manner regulations pertaining to excessive or unwanted sound. Through content neutral regulations, this article strikes an appropriate balance between the rights of individuals to engage in activities that create or decimate sounds at reasonable levels, and the right of the public to a peaceful and healthy environment. It is not the purpose and intent of this article to interfere unduly with the rights of free speech or exercise of religion. Further, it is not the purpose and intent of this article to implement these regulations in a manner that is based on the content of the sound in establishing these regulations. The Board of Supervisors hereby finds the following. Now, A, threat to public health, safety, and welfare. That's what we have to do in this town, as council members, is look out for the public health and safety and welfare, as well as be in charge of the monies that we have to guard and take care of. Anyway, we have to look at this threat posed by excessive or unwanted sound. Inadequately controlled sound presents a growing danger to the public health, safety, and welfare. Studies have found that these dangers include hearing impairments, interference with spoken communication, sleep disturbances, cardiovascular disturbances, disturbances in mental health, impaired task performance, and unwanted emotional responses. These effects can lead to, among other things, a wide variety of physical problems such as hearing disabilities, increased blood pressure, increased heart rates, abnormal heart rhythms, and fatigue. Mental health problems such as depression, anxiety, nervousness, stress, and emotional instability, and increased risk of accidents and errors in task performance, and negative effects on learning, reading attention, work performance, school performance, and interpersonal relationships.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah, well, I was done.
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask you, are you gonna read the whole
No,
ordinance?
no,
Okay.
no.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted to make sure that everybody knows the threat to the public
Yeah,
health.
that's good. We appreciate that.
And that resolve, I just wanna
Okay.
make this, public to our neighbors that we had to endure all this, so.
Yeah, I understand. Council, what's your pleasure? You wanna put this on the, next council agenda for adoption, or?
I'd like to make one comment if I
Sure.
could. You know, in order to have development, you have to have construction, and you have to have noise. So, we're under contract with development and contractors and noise. So, I just wanna make sure that we don't breach our contract with trying to stop noise that we're already,
Sure.
No, we're not gonna
Okay.
do that,
All right.
because it's all going forward. This
Okay.
is gonna have to come afterwards, like we talked about
okay,
before.
just wanna make
But
sure.
the other thing I did have to talk about was the time frame. Right now, we're at like, 7 AM to 11 PM that they can have that's our noise ordinance
11
curfew.
p.m. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Well, in Albemarle County has theirs from 7 to 10 PM. But, when you're in there trying to dynamite and, I'm trying to think, a drill for dynamite, it's really, really noisy at night. We're gonna have to look at that time frame for construction purposes and going forward.
I agree with that.
Yeah, it's very noisy, and that's what my point was gonna be, so.
So I'll make a note of that. Ms. Patterson.
I absolutely agree with you on that. All right.
I know we dynamite sounds.
Okay, council, you want this on the next, on the,
I guess it has to be advertised and all that.
I don't know.
He does.
Do we can, we have time, we still have time to advertise if we need to.
2 weeks.
Or do we?
We'd have to do that today.
Well, let's put it on the next,
Oh, okay, we'll do it, you wanna do it at, the May meeting?
yeah, just don't
Okay.
rush
Okay.
it.
Or we could do it at the April work session if you want.
Do you have time to get it on?
I have to do it by 4 o'clock today, get it to the paper.
I'd say
So she probably don't have time.
We can do it at the
How many places
April
can you
work
meet
session.
with?
Yeah, we can squeeze it in a work session.
Is that okay? All right, so y'all wanna do it at the April work session? All right. Okay, next item on the agenda is, we have a representative from Price and Ramey Insurance. Stacy, would you like to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Each year, we have someone come in from Price and Ramey to talk about any premium increases we have for our healthcare, which renews on July 1st. Sam Brown, our usual representative, retired, and he went up to Michigan to be with his family. So Ms. Regina Fields is going to discuss the information that she's provided to each of you in your red folders. And then I'll pass out some numbers after she's done so we can take a look at some things that are taking place with the healthcare, and we'll have kind of a question-answer period, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and I appreciate you all having me here. I did make some red folders for the ones that Stacy told me that I needed to have them for. And I tried my best to kind of simplify everything for you as far as the renewal goes. Unfortunately, I have to come to council and say we have an increase again this year. It is 10.3%. And I looked back, since I wasn't the agent that was actually taking care of you all, or the consultant that was taking care of your all's benefits, I wanted to make sure that I knew the history of your all's account and where we have been coming from. In 2016, we had a 0 increase. To this year, we have a 10.3. When I averaged the 4 out, for the past 4 years, it was an average of 6.9%. In all other cases, outside the local choice groups, they have had double-digit increases consecutively for the last 4 years. So not just 1 year, but each of the years. So actually being within the local choice has kept you all very low when it comes to the increases. One of the things that I wanted to let you know about the increase is how they come to that decision. And I may not know everything that I need to know, but I know who to go to find out the answers. And that's what I did. I went to Sandra Anderson with Anthem, who underwrites the local choice program, and so she was able to help me understand, because of the size of your group, 58% of your increase is actually indirect with the claims that we have within your group. As far as the local choice, you all are also pooled with all the other local choice groups in this area. So the other 42% of your claims come within the pool. And the pool's doing very well. In some of the articles that I gave you in your packet, you're gonna see you all had a couple of really expensive claims of employees that are still here, so those could be ongoing claims that they could anticipate for this coming year. So that's the reason for the increase, and I just wanted to let you all know why. I do also want you to know that Stacy and I went back to local choice even after we had met with Sandra Anderson and said, hey, we still don't think that this double-digit increase is correct. Will you go back and just ask for any additional relief? And again, when she replied to us just as of this morning, she let us know that the local choice said, you know, this is really the bottom that we can do as far as the 10.3% increase. So we tried to get it even lower. If we would have gone outside the local choice, just to let you know, your premiums would have been substantially more. And local choice actually took everything out to bid this year to the other carriers, and Anthem, Delta Dental is still the best providers that they could come up with. So that will be staying. There is no change whatsoever in the benefits. The only thing that we could even recommend for you is the utilization or non-utilization of the ER. And in your packets, you're gonna see Live Health online. And I don't know how many of you have ever utilized like a teledoc or Skyped with a doctor online, but this is where this has come from. This is something that at our agency we use as well, and it makes it very convenient for things that we know is wrong with us. If we have a sinus infection, if we know that it's allergy season and the trees are blooming and the flowers are blooming and all that nice pollen gets in our systems and we need those antihistamines to get them cleared out. This is an easy way and a much less expensive way to seek for help. Now, if you break a bone or you're in a car accident, we want you to go seek help. But for these smaller things, instead of utilizing the ER, we looked at the rates. For an average ER visit, it's like $850 or $60. If we utilize the Live Health online, it's a $25 copay. So which would you rather spend if it was your money that you were spending? So that's where we, look at there. We also have, a 98% utilization in network, so I have to applaud the group for utilizing the in-network doctors and hospitals. That's incredible. The only other place that I can see that we could improve is on the wellness side, because if you go and find out you have high blood pressure or something else going on with you when you go to your regular doctor versus having an episode of chest pains or a heart attack or things of this sort, a stroke, the expense-wise there tremendously drops, because at 100%, your preventative visits are covered. So if you go to your doctor on a regular basis every year and they do your blood work and they check that blood pressure and your cholesterol and all that good kind of stuff, they're gonna keep you from having those issues down the road, which is gonna keep your premiums down, because you're not gonna have those claims that we're gonna be able to go back and say, well, this is the reason that you had the increase, is because you had a large claim or 2 or 3 or however many there may be on there. Are there any questions on any of the renewal here? As consultant for your health coverage, this would be my recommendation to stay with, and the deadline to let the state know is April 1. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
What I'm gonna pass out now is a document that shows current premiums, per package, and then on the bottom in the blue is what the proposed, the new premiums and the proposed, option is for us to go to. And then the second page is some information that was put together that shows what other localities are paying, per plan for their employees. So I'll let you look at that, and if you have any questions, you can let me know. But basically, what it comes down to is, with our current premiums, we pay $1.3 million annually for healthcare coverage. That's the town's portion. What we're hoping to do, what we think is probably the best and simplest way to go, is to do percentage-based premium payment versus a dollar amount, which is, I think, where we were at last year. Is that correct, Chuck?
Yeah, we were all over the place last year, but going to, if we go to a straight percentage, I mean, it's just it's simpler to explain to employees, it's simpler to calculate what your increase is gonna be, it's simpler to do a lot of different things if you know what the base percentage everybody's paying for the particular plan that they're on.
And if we go to this new percentage-based, it would be 90% covered by the town for the employee only, 85% covered for an employee child, and then 80% for anything other than that. And if we go this route, it will still be $120,744 increase for the town to absorb, but it's much, I think, better than passing on a 10.3% increase to the employees to pay for this increase from the local choice. Do you have any questions about those numbers or anything else?
Have you run this by the employees yet?
No, we have just put this together to see what the impact would be on the town bottom line, if I'm being honest with you, Cindy.
So just for the record, that's what I was talking with Dawn a minute about.
on the second page, you can clearly see that Abingdon is already paying substantially more than almost all the municipalities around. So I do think it's fair, albeit an increase, or, it sounds like some people are gonna win, some people are gonna lose, it's kind of a mixed bag.
It's gonna increase a little bit. I think that, no one's gonna be happy with the increase. I mean, but, you know, I think I've said this for the last couple of years, we've done our employees a disservice by not, passing on at least a little of the increase as we've gotten them, because then when you hit them, I believe last year we split it 4.5%, so it was a 9% increase. When you hit them with that, it's a little harder for them to, you know, to absorb, and that directly impacts their paycheck. And so we're really trying not to do that as much as possible.
I think I recall last year that we, had to give them, was it a COLA raise?
Yeah, well, we went through so many different iterations of the health insurance last year, I can't even, you all had me do it so many different ways. Not this particular council, but the council did. So
We did split it, those
But we
4.5%.
did end up split it, but then we did cover that, you're exactly right, Ms. Patterson, with the cost of living adjustment, just to offset the cost of the health insurance, or to help offset the cost of the health insurance.
But as I said before, it looks like we're being pretty fair compared to our neighbors. I mean, is that fair to say?
Do you expecting us to give you an answer?
Well, they need an answer by April 1st if y'all want to proceed with local choice, which is our recommendation, as well as our
Do you want to bring
consultants.
this up in budget discussions, or you want you suggest we act?
I think that as far, the one thing that had come up that council probably needs to decide on as part of this is whether or not to offer any coverage to members of council. There was a request that came up to include council in the group coverage, so that if it was done as part-time employees, town pays nothing towards health insurance on part-time employees, but it could be offered, and the council members would pay the full amount.
And because it's less than 10%, the elected official base is less than 10% of our overall body of employees who belong to the local choice, it won't impact our census data, so we won't see an increase in premium if you decided to go the elected official route.
And these are for only the officials that want it.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, you don't have to take it. It gives you an option, and it doesn't affect the bottom line of what we have to charge.
There is, what Stacy handed out, a sample resolution would have to be adopted. And unfortunately, April 1st is the deadline for letting,
Okay.
so if you don't do it prior to April 1st, you have to wait till next year.
I'm ready, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I'm ready to decide. You want to go ahead and decide on it? Okay. Are you ready to decide too? Okay, I'm okay with the recommendation of the staff. Are you out? Jerry?
I'm fine with it.
Sure. Cindy? All right, okay, you got yours?
Thank you.
As far as the resolution goes, I think we should take that up today. I don't have the resolution's in our packet.
She gave it right here.
All right.
She gave it on the back,
Can
right here.
Can you pass it up? It's on the back?
This one,
Right here.
the
Yeah,
resolution?
yeah. See, I want you to read it.
Do we have to disclose, I mean, I'm fine with this, to the public who wants to be on the insurance, or at the end of this, or what,
No,
what's a recommendation?
You can just let
opt
me know
in
via
yourself.
email. Yeah.
Yeah, all of us are eligible, we can pick and choose, it makes all of us eligible.
I just wanna get that on record. Sample, well, this is the resolution here. Draft to be prepared, oops, well, I'm not supposed to read that. The Local Choice Health Benefits Program provides health insurance benefits to our employees and their dependents. Be it hereby resolved this day of 14th of March, 2019. And we'll insert the group name here. It's Anthem's Local Choice, okay, Local Choice. Does approve that coverage be added for our elected governing body and their dependents to be effective on July 1. Okay, thank you. This is a little bit reading into it.
That's why he sent it to you.
Yeah, he wanted me to make all mistakes. For government or October 1 for school, so it's July 1. And continuing in conjunction with our health insurance benefits. It is our desire to cover them as a special class of full-time employees and part-time. Right, no, just full-time, I'm sorry, full-time employees. I had a choice there. We recognize that health benefits for this class of employees will be available as long as they remain in their elected position. Retiree coverage for elected officials is not available. I'm sorry, I muddled through that.
Well, you did wonderful.
Thank you, Cindy.
Is there any rush to do this?
What?
Is there any rush to do this today?
April 1st.
Okay, council, what's your pleasure on the resolution?
I move we adopt.
I'd second that.
Motion by Mr. Bradley to adopt the resolution, second by Mr. Webb. Any discussion, council? Kim, call the roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Pletch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a presentation coming up by Ms. Amanda Livingston.
Thank you very much, Mayor Craig and council, and I will just tell you up front, I'm gonna be brief, because I know you have a lot on the agenda, but, thank you for having me today. I'm Amanda Livingston, I'm the marketing manager for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and I work with, Ms. During here. I wanted to talk to you about Travel and Tourism Week. This is a nationally recognized week for the travel and tourism industry. This year it is May 5th through 11th. It is a chance for communities all across the country to talk about the importance of tourism to their economy and also to the lives of the visitors and the impact that that has on them. We are planning some exciting things to recognize it this year that I would like to involve you in, but just wanted to say first of all that it is a joy to work in tourism in Abingdon, and it is easy to be excited about it because this council and this leadership really gets it. And I think you really, I can tell that you feel it in your bones and that you have done the research, and that is clear in your words and your actions. So, whereas a lot of communities have to spend a lot of energy making that case over and over again, we are very fortunate, and we recognize that we're able to really build on that enthusiasm and that knowledge of tourism. And thanks in part to that support and the hard work of our tourism businesses, we are really excited to report that in 2017, which is the last year we have data for, we saw a 2.5% increase in direct tourism spending in Washington County. Whereas the previous year it was a 0.5% increase. So year over year we're doing really, really well, and we want to keep building on that. So this year we, in collaboration and brainstorming with the Tourism Advisory Committee, we have decided that it's really important to put the focus squarely on the frontline tourism employees in the community. These are the folks who have a really direct impact on the visitor experience. They are the bartenders, the wait staff, they're the housekeeping service at the hotels, the gas station attendants who interact with the public here. Those are the folks that really can make or break the visitor experience, and we want them to understand that they are part of a larger industry and that they are vital to the industry, and we want them to be inspired and energized to do even better in the future. And just to throw another number at you, again in 2017, the tourism industry in Washington County sustained 1,203 jobs, full-time jobs. And so if you think about those jobs being under one business, that would make tourism one of the largest employers in the region. Instead, they're spread out over many mom and pop businesses and different businesses in our community. Because we really want to recognize that and kind of coalesce around our industry in general, we're trying something a little bit different this year. May 9th, which is the Thursday of Travel and Tourism Week, is also the first Thursday jams of the summer series. And so we are we are planning a VIP tent that would be located at Thursday jams that would be exclusively for employees of the tourism industry. Not tourism town employees, but tourism industry employees in town. We really want it to be a VIP experience, and we are working with local restaurants and other partners to try to solicit some complimentary food and drink. We'll of course have a live band there already, which is going to be fantastic. If you approve, we would really like to have an official welcome from the town of Abingdon. So Mayor Craig, if you are willing and able, we would like to invite you to give the official welcome to that event on Thursday night, May 9th. And in addition, we would also like to invite the entire town council to come mingle with the employees of this industry and really make them feel as special as we want them to feel. So we'll be sending an email, of course, to follow up with all the details and send that official invitation. But we're really excited about it. And then, of course, in support of that, we're going to do some PR around it. We're going to do some social media posting to share some of these numbers that we do have and some of the personal anecdotes that our tourism partners share with us, like during the blizzard, the amazing customer service that our partners gave to those folks stranded on the interstate, or back during the hurricane when we had so many people relocating. And then just, we're gonna have a handout to give you at the end of this, but the kinds of numbers that we're excited to share with the public in 2017, and again, this is at the county level because that's what we have data for, tourism generated $106.4 million in direct tourism spending in Washington County. And to put that another way, for every household in Washington County, that represents tax relief of $330 annually. So that means that's $330 that they would have to pay in additional taxes if the tourism industry was not bringing that business into town. So we want to get everybody really excited about this. We're excited about the direction that tourism is going in the county and the town of Abingdon, of course. And this is literally hot off the press. Jane and I had to struggle with our printer to get it to you today, but these are the numbers that we have for 2017. And you'll see it broken down in a bar chart, as well as some different ways of stating those numbers. So we're very excited, and we hope very much that we will see all of you on May 9th at our official VIP tent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. I'm glad to hear that we have a 2.5%.
Yes.
If you're curious about what last year looked like, would you like to see? Because our stair step is, and our
Yeah.
graph stair step is looking really good.
And I should say, although I wish that we could break it down just for Abingdon businesses, we don't have access to that data.
Except for meals and lodging.
Except for meals and lodging and tax. We do know intuitively that the majority of that is in Abingdon. Because if you think about, when they measure these numbers, they're measuring not just hotels, but restaurants. And then there's a calculation that is too complicated to take up your time with today, but it's a portion of things like grocery store receipts and gas station receipts. And if you think about the concentration of businesses in Washington County, we know that the bulk of that is gonna be in Abingdon.
Amanda brought up the importance of the frontline worker. There's that all-important question: what is there to do in Abingdon? And the killer answer is not much. The better answer is, oh my gosh, we have Barter Theater and the Muster Grounds and William King, we've got trails, we've got the Virginia Creeper Trail. That's what our task is to get every frontline worker to say what there is to do in Abingdon. And this is another mechanism. We have to be very creative about how to intersect with all the frontline people, because they're working really hard, and a lot of them multiple jobs. So that is the make or break question. What's there to do in Abingdon? And we want them all to say. Joel at JJ's and Papa Tom's, owner of both of those concerns, say that when his employees answer that question with a list of things to do, guess what? It's money in their pocket. They get more tips. So there is a way to benefit each individual's bottom line by answering that question. That helps us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is presentation
just say that Carrie and I have been working in trying to get something to bring before council as Main Street approaches the budget season, and request for funding.
What I've just given to you is an extremely rough draft of our work plan. The last town council meeting, we talked about, that we had voted on our transformation strategies. We had chosen 2 of those of the 4 that were recommended by National Main Street from their visit. So those were the arts transformation strategy and then the family-friendly, family-serving strategy. So this work plan in front of you is just what we have begun to flesh out of the tasks that would need to be completed. We're looking not within a year. This is a long-term strategy and a long-term work plan. So at least for the next 2 years, these are the things that we would be working on. Because you'll see that some of them will even say 2020 or to be determined because they are long-term projects and they have long timelines. So for example, the feasibility study is one thing that Abingdon Main Street can apply for through Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. And what that does, we're able to take a building such as the old jail or the Schaefer building on Main Street beside of Plum Alley. Tony and I have talked about that one a couple of times, that have outdated uses. The feasibility study, working with the property owner of those buildings, they can come in and say, these are the things that we could recommend to you as to what new uses could be for this building. For example, there was an old dilapidated warehouse in Richmond, Virginia that they didn't know what they were gonna do with. After the feasibility studies, they decided to turn it into the African American History Museum in Richmond. So it's projects of that scope and scale that we would be looking at. So the feasibility study would be one of those long-term projects. Now, shorter-term projects, like attached to this, you'll see like the timeline for Busker Fest and timeline for the Wolf Project that the Wolves will be hitting the streets this summer. June 1st is our deadline for that. But as far as the transformation strategies, things like Christmas, 4th of July, those are also shorter timelines, but then there are some longer timelines in there as well. Do you have questions?
One of the things that we have, the current agreement between Abingdon and Abingdon Main Street, very vague in what Abingdon Main Street is supposed to do, and very few deliverables in there that you can say, have they been or have they not been successful? So what we were talking about is trying to work out a more detailed work plan that would become part of any agreement between the town and Abingdon Main Street, that would have more measurable goals to hopefully help answer future questions as to what is the benefit that the town derives from being a Main Street program.
Yeah, so one thing that I've sort of struggled with in the past are what are the expectations of the town council? And I haven't always gotten a complete answer, but that within redoing the town contract, I would like to know what your expectations are of us, what you want to see happen within our organization and where you think we should be headed, and have those things laid out within the contract as well. So we're all on the same page and we know where we're headed and if it aligns with what you would like to see for the organization.
Well, I'd like to add that, you have a footprint.
Yes.
And I'm just curious to know how many business owners in your footprint know who you are. I don't believe some of them know who you are.
Do you know? Well, we can talk about the later.
Yeah.
I visit the majority of the ones who are active on a regular basis. So the Market District down there from Russell to Cummings Street, then you've got the break in between, and then you go on down to Goodman's and.
What about the new businesses?
Do you have an example? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't want to mention.
Sure,
names,
okay.
But I can get with you. But
Okay.
I'm just saying, I feel like that with your your service, that, you know, we have to see results when we give this money, because it's a, you know, we've got a tight budget and we have to.
Yes. Yes. And we work really hard. It's been 10 years of not being a successful program, so I've had about a year and a half under my belt now of trying to get it back on track and trying to get it headed in the direction that it's supposed to be in. And so takes a little bit of time, but we're getting there.
Well, and when they have ribbon cuttings,
Mhm.
are you there for that also?
I'm there for as many of them as I can get to, yes. I try. If they're not in my footprint, I don't want to cause confusion. So that's, if it's outside of that, I don't always attend those because I don't want there to be. So one of the things I get asked a lot from other businesses is, why are they not eligible for the things that happen within the footprint if they're outside of the footprint? And a lot of that, if you look up information on National Main Street or Virginia Main Street, what you will discover is that the purpose, the heart of the program is to revitalize these dilapidated buildings that aren't in use anymore, that are in that historic heart of the community and what the traditional square is. Now, Abingdon is different because we're linear. We don't have that square that, say, St. Paul does, or Marion, or even Whitville. We have the Market District, then you've got Courthouse Hill, and then you skip over to like Park and Pecan. So you have these 3 different neighborhoods that are all kind of working in conjunction with each other, but have different personalities. So all of those things kind of have to come together. I can't just, I'm not able to just focus on that square. Our footprint is actually probably a little bit bigger than some towns because of that situation. So we are trying to service as many folks as we can. It's just the point of Main Street is to bring back that like heart and soul of community.
Mary, you asked what our expectations are. I'll tell you what mine are.
Okay.
I think you all should be self-starters, and you should know much better than we what grants you need to apply for.
Yes.
And how to apply for them, and to get them done.
Yes.
And to let us see some results. I've been on council for 2 years, and all I've heard is complaints about Main Street. And I understand that it's been going on for years prior to that, and to tell you the truth, I'm expecting much more from Main Street than what we're doing right now.
Well, can I mention that too, because I printed this off, this was from the governor's. Northern announces $172,000 in Virginia Main Street grants.
Yes.
And people around us got 25,000.
Yes.
We only got 12.
Yes, I did not have the matching funds to get the entire 25,000, so that's where that came from.
Did you come to council and ask for matching funds?
I have 10,000 coming from EDA, so that's why I did not.
That's not what I'm asking you. Did you advise us that you needed $12,000 or whatever to match that? We needed to know that, and that's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir, and I completely understand. Trying to think back what the timeline was. It was a quick turnaround from when it was due. I came in late August. I think that grant was due last.
Well, we have a council contingency.
Right.
And routinely, people that need matching money, that something comes up quickly, routinely they come in and ask us for them. Most of the time, in fact, every time we've given it to them. That's kind of what I'm talking about with Main Street.
Right, and I guess I just didn't feel comfortable because you already giving EDA money, who was then giving it to us as well, so. And then we did apply for the project, grant as well for Busker Fest, so that added $5,000 last year to that program.
In the past, and I'm not gonna go into employee things, but in the past, directors, they've come and gone, and I've never been told why they have. I don't know why. By the other council, we don't know. It was never talked about or discussed.
So Elizabeth, I don't know.
I mean, we
Susan,
shouldn't talk about why they left, but I mean, I'm just telling you, there's been problems along this line for quite a while, and I think it's time to address it.
Yeah.
And I think I had mentioned maybe to Mr. Bidham earlier, I think our agreements for Main Street have been 2 years per term, is that right?
Yes.
But is it, I mean, I don't know that I feel comfortable signing a 2-year since I'm just getting my feet wet with the council stuff, is there a possibility if we change that to a year to not bind ourselves to 2 years of?
Derek, we're gonna have a closed session to discuss the.
Okay, all right, I was just curious.
I think that's possible, yes.
That's a good point there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
Yeah, I
thinking
didn't mean
numbers.
to-
No, you're fine, that makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions, Gary, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a bunch of agreements for Fairview. You've had, I'm not sure you got all the up to date. I believe Cam or somebody handed it out here. Mr. Benham, you want to address that issue? Or
I
have
will
Cam
get-
address it?
Good luck.
I will give it a try. Want to thank Kevin Worley for assisting. He did quite a bit of the legwork as far as getting things back on track with Dr. Moore. The agreement had expired back at the beginning of this year as far as the lease of the property. As we were looking through most of the agreements in the past, they've more or less been verbal, informal, as far as the Old West Tractor Association, what they do, Fairview Foundation, use of the leased property. So what we tried to do is get a more formal lease or licensing arrangement. Those organizations cover what they do up there. One of the things that we are suggesting in this budget is to move the Fairview Farms from a non-departmental allocation each year to a contractual arrangement under the Parks and Recreation part of the budget. With Ogata, we would formalize what they're actually doing as far as haying the property, doing some maintenance, running a couple of the events out there that bring people in. So it would be more of a performance arrangement with them. Dr. Moore has indicated he is willing to release the property that the expired lease is. There's an area that the town owns and then a parcel that was leased. In order to have some of the events that are out there, you need the leased property because it gives room to set up the vendors and the displays and for parking. So I think we have kept Mr. Bell occupied with this for the past couple of months as we've gone through numerous renditions of these various grants, or lease agreements. And I think at this point, staff would recommend that council consider approving them and entering into the lease agreements.
So I think there are a number of conceptual things that council needs to decide. One, like Mr. Bivens said, the town owns the property where the home is. It's 4.6 acres. Beside that property, the Moore Partnership owns an extensive tract, and actually they own many, many more tracts back behind it. But what has been used associated with the Fairview next door property is this 8.6 property that in the past had a lease, and that's what expired. Functionally, like Ken said, one doesn't work without the other. If you're gonna do it as a working farm and meet all the criteria of the deed to the town of making it the farm and planting crops and keeping up the house and all that stuff, those things have to be together. The link to keeping those things together so far has been the town. none of us were here, I don't think, when all this came about, so I'm not sure exactly the history of it. Kevin knows a little bit more about it, but I think the town was the only way to make it all work together at the time. Since then, the Old Glade Antique Tractor Association has sort of come to the forefront, and they do the bulk of the activities and work and that sort of thing. The other entity is the Fairview Foundation, that started out, as I understand it, as a committee of the town. Now it's a separate corporation that isn't directly affiliated with the town in any way, except for, I guess, if we're gonna have an agreement with them going forward. So, we own property, we're obligated under that deed to keep doing something. The only way, if we're gonna keep doing that, to accomplish that, is sort of what I've presented to you, and we can go through those things in detail. But that's, the first issue is, do we wanna keep doing all that stuff? What, we have it, because that's what we wanna do, we're committed to that moving forward, and there's a path to that. If there's not, I think unlike the past, that Old Glade and those sorts of things, I think would do that without the town. I think they're willing to use it, and I think that they'd still need money and that sort of thing to operate those things, but the town itself is really not doing a whole lot out there other than sort of facilitating things, and Kevin goes to some meetings and sort of oversees everything, but we're not, and we're obligating ourselves for the house and those sorts of things. If there are big things that need to be fixed with the house, the HVAC, roof, et cetera, then the town is gonna repair those things. But sort of the day-to-day things, we're just not really involved, we're just kind of facilitating. And then, so Ogata is doing those things on our property and Dr. Moore's property. And then the Fairview Foundation has sort of historic involvement from the family who used to own the property in the past, and they're just sort of interested in the property, and they go and they do the car show, I guess primarily is their only real thing that they do out there, but they come and have planted some crops and done some other things. So I think somebody needs to decide what path that we're on. And the last meeting that we had, I think council directed Kevin, see what we can come up with. Is there gonna be, can there be a lease? You know, this old lease had been expired, and there was some discussion of, and some consternation about why that had happened, and sort of why all this stuff was in limbo. And so Kevin has met with all these people several times and sort of ferreted out what everybody would like. And my job has been to come up with, knowing all that, assuming that the town wants to be the grand facilitator of all this, what the structure of those agreements would look like. But it's complicated, and maybe more complicated than it needs to be ultimately, but the way it's set up as this sort of two separate things, I think this is the best way we can accommodate it. But
wouldn't it be less complicated if they sort of worked it out, since it really involves them, right? I mean, they could operate everything without the town even being involved in it, couldn't they? Except that the town owns.
Right. And if I could add to, one of the things that kind of, we didn't have a lease at all last year, and we were operating, you know, without anybody having contracts and a lot of things, insurance was there. But one of the things that came back in discussion was, in the original deed of gift, the one statement in the deed of gift was, parties further noted that the event that the property described herein is not utilized per the requirements as set forth, the property shall revert back to the grantor, it or their heirs or assigned. So the purpose was trying to actually, if we don't do anything and just choose to walk away, then according to Mr. Bell, if that reads correctly in the deed, that it would just revert back, we would just walk away from the whole thing. If we choose to put something in place, then either, on our property portion of it, then we continue to operate that, then we needed either to fund some way to continue to do the things that are done out there. Now, one of the things on that site out there is our community garden that we do with the town, that Ogata does till and plow and maintains that portion for us, because we don't have the equipment. I mean, we don't have the equipment or the manpower to do some of the things that they've been willing to do, as well as some of the maintenance on the barns and the equipment, the demonstration, and that was the whole purpose of putting that all together, was to have all that out there. So the two options really are, do we choose to continue to do what we're doing and deal with it, fund it, and actually put contracts in place so we control it? Or do we choose just to give the whole property back to the Moores and let them choose to do what they wanted to do and work with Ogata and all of that? I've been dealing with it since last January, I believe. Jason was working with it before, and I kind of inherited with, from Jason, which was fine. I had no problem at reservations and all, working with whoever. I'll do anything I need to do. But in the last couple of months, since we didn't have anything, we obviously needed to have something in place. That's why we started the conversations with the council in January to make the decision on where you wanted us to go. We didn't have a lease, and there was thought that maybe Dr. Moore may not want to enter into a lease, but after conversations with him that I had, he was willing to do that. And again, Mr. Bell spent a lot of time also putting this together. So the decision, I guess, is where do you want us to do with it?
Well, and I think to your point, Donna, yes and no. I think that Old Glade is very happy doing what they're doing, and I think that they've done, by all accounts, a good job and that sort of thing. But because we own that one property, nobody wants to be the boss. I mean, everybody sort of wants to be the boss, but nobody wants to take responsibility. I guess I should say.
But there's a cost with that.
Absolutely. So it's complicated for us, and I think we've tried to come up with the best way to thread the needle of all the entities that are involved. But it's tough to piece together the way. It would be a lot easier if one entity owned it all and controlled it all and did all the stuff there. I don't see a path to that right now. But if, since it is separate, and I think even if, let's say that Old Glade were willing to sort of take over our role, I don't think that they have the funds to do all the stuff out there. I mean, it doesn't really, I mean, they sell some sorghum and have car shows and collect a little bit of money, but it doesn't pay for the things, the $10,000 that the town is putting towards these particular things, and much less the upkeep. And I don't know that anybody's really signed on to upkeep this historic home as nicely as the town has. So that's.
Kim, the way I read all this, and you're right, it's complicated, but the way I read all of it, the town is getting out of anything on a day-to-day basis. Seems like in these agreements, we're not responsible. Responsibility is on other parties to maintain and operate the facilities. Is that right?
That's correct. That was the direction that we
Okay,
were
and so
pursuing with the scope of service.
You already have had in your budget in previous years something close to the amount we're talking about paying the Old Glade Tractor Association. Is that what you all are talking about, funding?
Well, actually, and I'll be clear that a little bit, because in the past, the council has given non-departmental funding. Last year was 8,000, the year before that, I believe, was 15, before that was something, another amount.
Yeah.
But they've, council has actually funded. What we're recommending if we do this is that we actually put it in a direct departmental funding and have in it, as you saw in scope of service, there's very specific things that they must do in each category to get the funding accordingly. And we are trying to get out of the maintenance. But now on the other side of it, we have been mowing it, maintaining it, doing a lot of stuff. So we've been putting our staff resources and our staff equipment and manpower and all of that. So I mean, we've kind of been hitting it twice. What we're trying to do is actually, if you're going to do it, we're just going to hit it one time.
That's the point I'm making. On a day-to-day basis, the town gets out of it. We pay Old Glade $10,000, which is less than what we're paying them now.
Previously.
And so it sounds like a pretty good arrangement to me.
Yeah, and the only thing, and I think you're exactly right, the only thing would be that we're responsible for upkeeping the building, but we own it, so we would keep it up.
Well, we don't upkeep it on a day-to-day basis, only if the heat pump or something like that fails.
So do you see any drawbacks to this arrangement?
Well, it is very convoluted in many ways, and a lot of us have talked about it, and a lot of the staff have talked about it. It is very convoluted, because it has a whole lot of different parties and a whole lot of different things. And, you know, if we wanna maintain, and that was my point when I was trying to make in the January meeting, is both parcels, it either needs to all be in one, or it all needs to be separate. You know, Tony Sullivan used to say, you can't be halfway pregnant. You're either all the way or you're none. So that's kind of the direction, I think, unfortunately, that we're at. It's either we need to be all the way, or we need to be none. And that's the decision that.
But you consider this the all the way?
I think given with.
This could be manageable, I'm sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think given what we've got,
Right.
this is the best
The best
solution.
solution. How about you, Kevin? Like, how much of your resource is this gonna require if we adopt this and move forward? Is it gonna be less work for you, or?
Well, I appreciate that comment. But I will still attend the monthly meetings that they have, just so that way they'll be on site, and I'll still be the point of contact for them. Because we would still help and assist with, you know, if something came up, so we continue to monitor it. In that aspect, it's not, you know, not a bad thing to consider. I think there's a series of things that have came out of all of this that we've kind of had a better understanding, a little bit more of what actually has been done, what we need to do if we move forward with this.
Yeah.
So you guys suggest then to move forward?
I think, assuming that we want to continue doing what we've been doing, this is the best solution, yes. And everybody is, in concept, agreed to what we've presented. And so the agreements that you've seen, there's, the town would lease the Moore property, and then in that lease, the Moores would give permission for Ogata and Fairview to use his property. We don't represent them and not responsible for them directly. I would suggest that those entities also enter into a separate lease with the Moores, but I can't draft a lease for them directly. But our lease gives them permission to be on there. Then we have a lease agreement on our property, the 4.6 acre property with Ogata. And then Fairview is a little bit different situation, like I said, of what it is that they do. That they weren't really, my perception of it was that they weren't really willing to step into a role of actually being a lessee. They wanna have the right to come there, and they wanna have the right to do some stuff, but they don't really wanna be responsible for too many things. So that will be a license agreement, which is basically like a ticket that you're allowed to be on the premises, but you don't really have any responsibility, and we only let you do what we say you're allowed to do. And then we have this non-professional services agreement, which covers both properties, that Ogata is gonna mow and rake and all the things that they're gonna do on both properties, for which we're gonna pay them $10,000. So those are the agreements to bring all this together.
I have one more thing, and, you know, one thing about it is the original contract was 10 years with 5 renewals and all of that. This is a 5 and 5, but there's also a 90-day write-out clause. At any point, for any reason, if we go this route and it doesn't work out, and it's not gonna be in the best interest of the town to continue to do it out there, we do a 90-day write-out, and you could exclude yourself, and then you could step away. So there's not like we're binding ourselves to the thing. Cam wrote that very specific to make sure it was for both parties. You know, maybe they don't like us being out there anymore, and maybe they wanna go something different, and they write a letter of exclusion, and then they step out of it. So it could go either way.
But to Kevin's point before, I'm sorry, Ken, being out there and not having an agreement and having people go out and do all this stuff and who knows what is a really bad idea. So we need something.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing to bear in mind is that the town has made some investments out there in fixing up the house, so there's already public investments that have been put in. The other thing that we've talked about, and I think the agreements reflected, is permanent structures that are built should be built on the property that the town owns and controls. Whereas in the past, without agreements on the lease property, there was I think a $30-something thousand barn that was built, that the agreement clearly clearly states that if the lease is terminated, it reverts back to the property owner. So it was public funds and public people that helped to build that structure on land that was leased. And going forward, if you're doing permanent structures, they should be on the land that's owned by the town, and that kind of protects your investment. There's some, where the gardens are, those are on the town-owned property. You could move that stuff over onto the leased land, and then, if the lease is terminated for any reason, the most you're gonna lose is whatever crop is planted that hasn't been harvested when the lease ends.
Okay, council, I believe the staff is recommending that we enter into these lease agreements.
As far as we know, on the other end of parties involved in this, do they find it acceptable, the agreement? As far as we know.
I've met with Agata on a couple of occasions, spoke with them. They had a vote of their board, the Agata board, of 39 and 0, what they told me to moving forward with the agreement. A couple of small little wording changes, but that was, Kim took care of that. And I've got to represent the new, we actually presented lease with the Fairview Foundation, and Kim, after several conversations, we addressed that as a licensure agreement, and that's got to be represented back to the Fairview group, so it's not been formally adopted by that group, if that's the direction.
But it should address what they asked us for that, so I presume that they'll agree to what they asked for. So that doesn't always work.
So when will that be done or ready? Do we know?
Well, it's waiting for y'all's decision today before I send everything back through to any.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah.
I think we're,
I move that we authorize the town manager as heirs and assigns to enter into agreements as given to us today.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Bradley to enter into the leases, seconded by Mr. Webb. Any discussion? Kim, call roll, please.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Welch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Okay. Moving right along, we got another agreement. Mr. Dillon.
This one came out of the blue a month and a half ago, that apparently the Harmony Hills Lane property, which is also known as the Sapo Lane property, about 24 acres, that's town-owned.
That isn't actually on Sapo Lane,
Well, why would we call it anything else?
Apparently, for a number of years, there was an agricultural lease that was advertised, put out on the property. There was only one individual that was responding, and at some point in time, it wasn't renewed or anything, and I think it was more or less a verbal, just go ahead and keep doing what you're doing. We have put that back out, received again only the one proposal, but would recommend that the town move forward with an agricultural lease for David Millsap to hay and plant a few crops on the property, clean the fence lines and things like that, so that the property is kept cleared off. The agreement we have has an out, so that if the town has a purpose to sell the property or develop the property in some way, I think there was a 60-day notice that would be given, and hopefully that if there's any crop that's planted in that 60 days, that it would mature and you'd be able to get it off before the expiration. But we would recommend that the town enter into a lease to, or an agricultural agreement to that property with David Millsap.
Thank you.
That was a 3-year.
I think it's a great idea.
I would too, I'll make a motion.
I'll
That
second.
You moved it,
we
we-
enter into
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Ms. Wicks to approve the lease agreement and authorize the town manager to execute. Second by Vice Mayor Patterson. Any discussion? Okay.
3 years? We're gonna do this for 3 years?
It's it would be a 3-year, which would allow him, if he wants to, in other words, at any point in time with a 60-day notice, you can terminate the lease, but rather than have to go out and re-advertise it on an annual basis, we did it for 3 years with that 60-day notice to terminate.
Any other discussion?
I just have a quick, I guess, blurb here to put in. It says this, the term, it says shall commence on March 7 and shall continue for a period of 1 year. Is there another place in here? I just got this, though. Do you know where where here is?
I didn't have a copy. I didn't
Here,
have my
well, I'll
copy
just
of it
grab
down
that
here,
for
so
you.
I was
Right
thinking.
here, all I didn't see is the term. Oh, you didn't know?
Did I
Does
say
Mr.
that
Biddle
wrong?
have one?
It's on page 5, item 4.
Okay, this was on page 2.
Is it right here, or do I have the old one?
So you do.
Records.
Do we advertise it as 3 years?
Kim, I thought we advertised it as a 3-year.
I think we drafted an agreement and then we did an RFP and then I don't know that we came back around to the agreement after the RFP was issued. How about the motion be that an agreement be entered into by the town manager consistent with the RFP to which Mr. Millsap responded?
That works.
Okay, who made the motion?
I know we talked
Donna.
about.
Donna.
Will you allow that amendment,
I
Donna?
will.
Okay.
And I'll second
Let's,
that, yeah.
The
she'll
notice says
second
the bid process
the
is 1 year.
amendment.
Hmm?
The bid process is one for 1 year
For 1
increments.
year.
1 year.
One is 1 year increments.
Is there an automatic renewal for up to 3 years?
Hmm.
It says it can continue with mutual consent of the parties.
Yeah.
Is there language in here? May be extended for a period of time upon mutual agreements by both parties.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we don't need the amendment, you wanna withdraw yours?
Leave it in there.
Huh?
Leave it in there, make sure it's covered.
Leave it in there, okay. All right, let's vote on the amended motion. Call roll, please, Kim.
Mr. Bradley?
Aye.
Ms. Quetch?
Aye.
Mr. Webb?
Aye.
Ms. Patterson?
Aye.
And Mayor Craig?
Aye.
Mayor, when we take a break for a second, I think Kim needs to send out
Okay.
a notice so we can get those leases in under the deadline to vote on. Yeah.
I thought we were gonna take that up in the work session. Are you talking about
If we're
getting
gonna,
something in the newspaper?
yes,
I thought we agreed to take it up in the work session, so we wouldn't need to advertise it today. Is that what we're
we're talking
I
about the
think he's
leases.
talking about the
Yeah,
leases.
he's talking about.
Oh, you're talking about the lease, okay. All right, we're in recess. Item 7, discussion regarding repurposing existing wayfaring signs from Main Street areas on Ken Bidham.
This has come up in a couple of meetings, basically revolving around the urban pathway. Some staff feel that the signs along Main Street are not that visible or not that well utilized, and I think there's some out of date. Discussion among staff was of moving a few of those signs from their current locations over to locations along the urban pathway that would direct people that are on the pathway to the businesses along Main Street. Any staff want to add to that?
That's correct, and you know, Jane and I talked about this several times, that we've been working together over the last year, and really come before that, with changing the signage out that was in those, and working with town staff to get those printed out as we needed it. We feel they're not as utilized. Some areas are kind of saturated, so what we thought about is spreading some of those out, use them on the urban path. We could also use them over the Sinking Spring Cemetery. There's some opportunities there to designate some of the marquee, the key areas of the cemetery as well. And you know, you just thought maybe a good purpose, that just, we're not getting rid of them, we're just repurposing them.
The changing of the information of the signs is incredibly labor intensive. It takes tourism, puts it on a piece of paper, then sends it over to GIS, who translates the new map and the businesses into the other side on the map. And then it takes Kevin's crew, I don't know how, and then we get them laminated, and then it takes Kevin's crew, I don't know how long to change all those signs.
There's 22 units along not only Main Street, but they're on some of the side streets, a few other places, and Depot Square and some of those. Some of those we will leave, because they can still have a good purpose, but some of the ones we need to relocate and make them useful.
The dual purpose of having them, at least some of them on the urban pathway, there's two things. Number one, it does connect that pathway with the cash boxes, because if we don't get people off that pathway to the cash boxes, we miss an opportunity. It's also another way to delineate the urban pathway.
All right, council, what are your comments, sir?
I don't have a problem with doing this at all.
You don't?
And I'm glad for the explanation of why our wayfaring signs have not been particularly successful. I think we must be doing something wrong. Withful has recently done a big study of wayfaring signs and how to avoid them, and maybe we could benefit from the results of their study if we can latch onto a copy. So
I bet we could secure that, and I'm making a note of it now. I think that, you know, the size of the sign has been an issue. The height of them has been an issue. The fact that it's a clunker in the middle of the sidewalk has been
Yeah, I
an
looked
issue.
down on couple of signs.
Yeah.
And color too matters, you know, that's gonna get visibility as well, so.
And to echo Mr. Bradley's remark, I think that looking at how some other communities have successfully done that, I think there is an opportunity and a need for Abingdon to have some kind of uniformity in what people look for. Okay, I'm looking for this shape and size and color, and that tells me how to navigate.
The color and also your text, and what style,
Yep.
and that'll kind of tie into that.
Yeah, we've tried to make these signs that, I don't think any research was based on the size, the placement. We've tried to make these signs work for years, and it's just not, so we're hoping this replacement.
I mean, you walk down Main Street for one block and there's a sign and it tells you what's on the next block. And you walk down and look at it, it tells you what's on the next block, instead of one sign, you know, that covers a pretty good area with all the restaurants on it. You know, we tried to minimum, the reason we kind of started doing that was because if you make it too small, because of the size of them, you kind of lost the size of the writing got too small, especially, you never see them from any of the drive-by. It's always a walk-by to look at those things. And we put a map on one side, and the other side has been events and several things different over the year. I think we just can make a better purpose, and I think reusing and looking whatever others have done and see how they've capitalized on the cash box idea, and that's a purpose of it.
Okay, council, any more comments or discussion? Do you have, I think we have a consensus of what you're doing is okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With the council permission, I'm gonna move item 11 up to now. Is that okay with everybody? Sure. Ken?
Well, as you saw at the beginning of the meeting, Marion Watts will be retiring on April 1st. Talked with the Human Resources Department, several different staff members. Rick Statzer has been doing much of the work for the past 6 months to a year as we prepare to make this transition. And would like to let council know that Rick Statzer will be moving into the building official's position on April 1st to fill that. We're not at this point in time going to advertise to fill Rick's vacancy. We'll leave that for